Namaste, everybody. Sri Ram Chandra ki, everybody say Jai. Sri Ram Chandra ki, Jai. Sri Ram Chandra ki, Jai. So, welcome all of you to this holy, auspicious occasion of celebrating the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra is an incarnation of God, one of the avatars of the Lord who appeared millions of years ago on earth. And whether it's 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, different incarnations appear for the same purpose. The internal reason is that they appear to give pleasure to their devotees that are on the planet or come with them. And it's their leela, their blissful pastime. They just enjoy all the time what they're doing. But because this world is also populated by asuras, do you know what asuras are? Sura means godly, so what does asura mean? It means demons. So, here's the demons are always creating trouble for all of us. So anyway, the Lord says He comes Pariparanaya Sadhunam to give pleasure to the sadhus and His devotees and to annihilate the demons. So the story of the Ramayana we're going to hear tonight a little bit from two nice Swamis that are visiting us. Technically, one's been a Swami for 30 years and the other one's becoming a Swami very soon. He lives like that for a long time. And now we're going to chant some Sitaram Kirtans Bhajans. I'll try to lead a little bit. Natesh will take. Natesh, you on up. Kirtan Wallace. He lives on the hill. What's the spiritual name?
On the hill.
What's the spiritual name of that hill? Is there one?
Well, we call it Palazzi Kailasa.
Okay, Kailash.
Yeah, it's like Kailash.
Wow.
So I don't have my tilak on. And we have deities of Krishna and Jagannath. We don't have standard deities of Lord Ram here, but we brought some little ones in the middle of the altar, right in the very center. And later on, we're going to put them here, and everybody can come up and bathe them on Lord Ram's birthday, his appearance day. Also, briefly, it says one should not think that the Lord takes birth like us. He appears and He disappears by His own sweet will. And you know, we have some karma attached to us that also flavors our appearance and disappearance, or birth and death in the worlds over and over. Do you play Madonna?
I can play Madonna.
You do? Yeah, just for one tune. So we have a chant, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram. Can you all say that?
Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Sita Ram Jaya, Sita Ram, Sita Ram Jaya, Sita Ram. Everybody.
Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Sita Ram. Sita Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Shri 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 Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita 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 Ram.
Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram. Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram. Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
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 Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
Sita Ram, Jai Sita Ram.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Shri Ram Chandra ki jai. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Shri Ram-navami ki jai. So now we'd like to introduce our two guests tonight. One is ready. Maybe you could say it. This is Dhanesvara Prabhu. He's been a devotee as long as
Jai Dhanesvara Prabhu. Nitai Gaur.
Hey,
So
Hare
good to
Krishna.
see you.
Yeah, what a surprise.
Dhanesvara
Old
Prabhu.
friend from Laguna Beach.
Ah.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hey.
Good to
Jai
see you.
Jai Prabhupada.
Oh.
Excuse me.
So this is Dhanesvara. He's a Vaishnava monk. Thank you. And there's Ganapati Svami, who's a very old friend of ours. He comes in and out of Arizona. Spends time teaching Krishna consciousness, especially to people at the Grand Canyon.
Oh boy.
He has an outdoor ashram at the Grand Canyon part of the year. And the rangers look very, as far as I understand, they like him very much, like what he's doing there. There's about 100 languages going in and out of there every day. Anyway, Ganapati Maharaj and Dhanesvara are both going to speak to us something about the Ramayana and the Lord Rama's pastimes. First, we're going to start with Dhanesvara. About 20 minutes, sir, and then Ganapati Swami. We'd like to give them a warm Haribo!
Haribo!
Again, Haribo!
Haribo!
Thank you. Haribo.
Hare Krishna, it's a very great pleasure to be able to share this wonderful experience with you tonight. Wonderful occasion. Is anybody here for the first time? Oh, great. Welcome. I'm so happy you came. I hope that you come again and again and join all the wonderful activities that are going on here. How many of you have heard of Rama-navami before? Anybody? Okay, good. And Rama-navami is one of the great classics of India. It explains the history, the story of Ramachandra, Lord Ramachandra, who came to exhibit the behavior of an ideal king. The Lord incarnates many, many times on this earth, and generally comes for a specific purpose. In this particular occasion, this incarnation, he came to exhibit the behavior of an ideal king to give example how we should behave. Of course, we get so many examples on the other end of the spectrum in the modern day, and the contrast in that is very great. Sometimes it's depressing, isn't it? All of those leaders who we look up to and hope that they'll give us good examples, so many times we become let down. And if you ever experience that, we want to invite you to please read the Ramayana, the wonderful story of Ramachandra, because there you can see, actually, this is not a fictional story, this is actual historical narration of the wonderful personalities who exhibited ideal character at that time. I'm just going to explain the story very briefly for those who are not familiar with it. Ramachandra, he was the heir apparent. He was the next in line for the throne. And through twists of fate, the king had promised a boon, offered to grant a wish to one of his queens, Kaikeyi, that whatever she wanted, because she saved his life in the battlefield one time, so he offered that whatever, you ask me anything, I'll give you whatever you want. So she said, well, wait, and sometime in the future, when I want something, then I'll ask. So what happened was, when Ramachandra was about to be coronated, he was about to be made the king, Kaikeyi then went to the king and said, I want my son Bharata to be the king, and Ramachandra, just to make sure there's no politics going on, Ramachandra should go to the forest for 14 years. King Dasarath was, of course, devastated by this because he so much loved his son, not just him, but everybody in the kingdom. They loved Ramachandra. And they were, they couldn't imagine even being without him for one day, what to speak of 14 years. So anyway, as it turned out, that the king, to fulfill his promise to his queen, he asked Ramachandra to do that. Ramachandra then went to the forest, but with him, his wife Sita Devi volunteered to go. Now she's a princess. She's not ordinary. She's not a type of girl that would go ahead and live in the forest, roughing it like that, especially for 14 years. Huh? But she went along also. And Rama's brother, Lakshman, also, who was extremely devoted to him, also volunteered to go with him to assist him, to serve him while he was in the forest. Then later on, while they were there, the evil King Ravana, who lived in Lanka, what we call Sri Lanka, or what used to be Ceylon, that was Ravana's kingdom, and he had heard about the beauty of Sita Devi, and being a lusty wretch, he decided he wanted to possess her. So he was trying to make some plans how he's going to get a hold of her. He sent one of his one of his magicians, Marichi, who could assume any form that he wanted. He took the form of a golden deer to enchant Sita Devi and went running around, prancing around in front of her. And she said, "Oh, that's such a beautiful deer. Ramachandra, capture that deer for me. I want that deer as a pet." And Ramachandra, he was a little unsure that this deer was actually what it seemed to be. But at the plea of his wife, he went after it. But he said, he told his brother, "You stay here and you protect Sita Devi." So what happened was then the Marichi could imitate the voice of Ramachandra, and he was crying out, "Lakshman, Lakshman, help, help, I need your help, come now." So Sita heard that crying. She was completely alarmed. And she said, "Lakshman, go help him, go help him." And Lakshman, he said, "No, don't be ridiculous. There's nothing that can happen to Lakshman." Lakshman wasn't fooled. He said, "Don't worry about it." But Sita, she kept pestering him, "Please, please, my Ramachandra, he needs help." So finally, Lakshman, he drew a circle around her with his bow. "Don't step outside of this circle. You will be protected as long as you stay here inside this circle." So Lakshman then went to see what was going on. While both the men were gone, then Ravana came, disguised as a Brahmana, as a holy man. And he was begging alms. Now the culture is that when a holy man comes and asks for something, you give him. So Sita, she was torn. Here's the holy man, he's asking for something, but I can't leave outside this circle to take care of him. So what to do? So she was bewildered what to do. Finally, anyway, out of womanly sentiment, she was convinced to step outside the circle to give some water to the holy man, so-called. And Ravana then grabbed her and took her away to the kingdom of Lanka. Then, of course, Ram and Lakshman came back. Sita's gone. Oh my gosh, what happened to her? And Ramachandra, he's lamenting. He's showing what happens for, when we're attached, when we're very much attached to the member of the opposite sex, we become very grief-stricken when something bad happens to them. So, anyway, so Ramachandra, Lakshman, they assembled an army, a very special army of monkeys and bears, who were actually the gods, the demigods, who had taken birth to assist the Lord in his pastimes. And they went searching for Sita Devi. Hanuman found her on Sri Lanka, came back with a message, and then they knew where to go to attack. Then they, of course, they had to figure out how they're going to cross the ocean, right? There's a big ocean between India and Lanka. And so Ravana said, well, let's just build a bridge. And they built a bridge out of stones that floated on the water. Now people, this sounds a little fantastical, a bridge out of stone, right? I mean, of course we have many bridges out of stone, but they have something to support them. But anyway, they were able to do that. So much so, and you can still see this bridge. There's photos of it from satellite photos, and you can see this. I think they've given it the wrong name. They call it Adam's Bridge. Adam had nothing to do with it. It's Ramachandra's bridge. And from space, you can see the line underneath the water. Anyway, then Ramachandra killed the evil Ravana, got his wife back. They all went back to Ayodhya, and didn't quite live happily ever after, but there were some of the details I'm not going to go into. But Ramachandra ruled the world for 11,000 years as an ideal king. And in his kingdom, because everyone was righteous, there was no drought, not excess rain, it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. Everybody was very happy. In fact, there was not even death for those who didn't even want it. So this is a result of following the principles of religion. This is not some fairy tale that, oh yes, right. Because we don't see that in our experience today. The fact of the matter is, this is far from a holy world today, or an ideal world as it was back then. And the point is that if we actually did, if we do, or if we will, or when we will, follow the laws of the Lord, follow the instructions of the Lord, how to live happily in this world, that again can come. In fact, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that if we establish the principles of religion again on this earth, it will again become like that, like what's called the Satya Yuga. So, the Ramayana is wonderful because all of the characters that we read about, they give ideal behavior. And when we read about that, it's so, touches the heart so much. And so this is why it's been a beloved epic all over India for years and years and years. People would come together in the evening and they would hear the stories of the Ramayana. It was their television, it was their radio, it was their entertainment. And it was wonderful to hear it again, and you never get tired of it. You hear it again and again and again. So, not only were the people ideal, but there's very wonderful lessons in the Ramayana in terms of how do we sometimes make decisions. Many times, of course, we're perplexed. We have some moral quandary about what to do in some situation. Do I do this or do I do that? Which is right, which is wrong? So there's many such examples of these quandaries in the Ramayana to help us understand how to follow the principles of religion even in a very difficult circumstance. The first one, of course, is Maharaj Dhanesvara, who, even though it did kill him, after Ram left, after he banished him to the forest, he was feeling so much absence from his son that he had lost his will to live. He died. But still, because he had made the promise, he had to keep his word. Even though it really broke his heart and he lost his will to live. So, how many of us, we face difficult situations like that, we just say, okay, well, the heck with that, plan B, right? No. He made his promise, and then to go back on his promise was impossible, even if it cost him his life. So that's one. Another very wonderful example is Bharata, Ramachandra's brother. So Kaikeyi, she wanted her son to take the throne, even though it was Ramachandra's. Actually, he was the rightful king. He didn't want the throne, even though his mother was pushing him, take the throne, take the throne. And, no, I won't do it. But then after the king sent Ram to the forest, Maharaj Bharata, he very reluctantly, he said, I won't sit on the throne, but I'll act in the place of Ramachandra until he returns. While he was gone, so now here's another situation, right? His mother, now in that culture, understand that whatever their parents tell you to do, you do. This is like following, this is the principles of religion. So his mother, she wanted him to be the king. But again, he went against the dharma of that time, and he refused to accept the throne. Again, a very difficult moral quandary. Do I follow mother or not? No. Why? Because he's the servant of the Lord, Ramachandra, and he understood the proper principle. And while Ramachandra was gone, he wore only tree bark for clothing. He slept only on a kusha straw mat, like a straw mat like that. And his food, he didn't cut his hair or his nails, had matted locks, and he would only eat barley cooked in cow's urine. That was his only food. Amazing, huh? Lakshman, who went to the forest with Ramachandra, he also was very devoted to Ram. So much so that Ramachandra's needs were his only thought. Whatever he could do to serve Ram, that's all he wanted. In fact, he didn't even eat for the entire 14 years that he was in the forest. Some or other he had the ability, but he fasted from solid food for 14 years. So these are just a few of the wonderful examples of the wonderful characters that we read about. What about Hanuman? We see pictures of Hanuman sometimes where he's ripped open his chest and you see Ramachandra and Sitaram there in his heart. So devoted was he. So when we read these stories, these epics of the Ramayana, it's so touching, it's so wonderful to see that actually there was people of this character to give us inspiration, because we need inspiration, don't we? It's not always easy to do the right thing. So we need help, we need encouragement, we need to understand that sometimes not following the Dharma or the rules is a proper thing, and sometimes following them is the proper thing. So many, many wonderful stories there. And so on this day of Ramachandra's appearance, we celebrate his appearance by remembering his wonderful pastimes, his wonderful activities, his wonderful character, and in that way become inspired also to live a proper and righteous life. So I'll end with that. So thank you very much, and we happy to see you again. Sri Ramachandra ki, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman ki.
Bad news. Thank you, Ganesha, for actually, he could have gone for hours and hours. Traditionally, Ramayana means 9 days people would meet and give up everything else, practically eating, practically nothing. Maybe a few hours sleep every night. But they would separate the whole Ramayana, 24,000 verses, into 9 days. And they would just get so absorbed hearing, so absorbed that the character of them, Kumara Svami, is some type of historian. And this is a quotation that I read a few days ago within a description of Ram's pastimes by one of our members. And it talks about the responsibilities of a leader. It reminds me of, there was some world organization that were trying to put together a universal Bill of Rights, something like that. And they were interviewing famous and important and influential people around the world, so they came to Gandhi, and they asked him. He said, I think it's more important to, first of all, organize a bill of duties rather than a bill of rights. Let's see what our responsibilities are first before we ask for others' responsibilities towards us. So, especially when it comes to leadership, how it's an extremely responsible position in a God-conscious state. very, very heavy, very weighty. They didn't take it lightly as an opportunity to exploit the weaknesses and the ill-advised faith of others, simply because I'm in a position over them. So he says, Kumaraswamy says, in an aristocratic society, such as Valmiki, who is the author of the original Ramayana, such as Valmiki contemplates, the severity of social discipline increases toward the summit. The higher you go, the more responsibility. Those who have the greatest power must practice the greatest self-restraint. Because we all know power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So the higher you go towards absolute, and we have so many examples, whether it's in the religious world, whether it's in the political world, whether it's within the sports world now. Practically every week there's a new sports scandal, some types of abuse, whether sexual or emotional or whatever. So it is needful to remember this essential character of a true aristocratic society if we are to understand some of the most significant, and to the Democrat and individualist, probably means most of us in this room, the most incomprehensible and indefensible episodes of the Ramayana. Some very, very tough issues, as Prabhu was saying, in terms of how to analyze and interpret and act upon Dharma. And there's so many different levels of Dharma. Just like most of you, I think, are aware or have studied, maybe some deeply, Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna is arguing with Krishna on one level, and his arguments are perfectly sound on that level of artha. And Krishna is arguing on a higher level of Dharma, and then he argues even on a higher level beyond that. Of love, which knows no laws and restrictions, ultimately. So there are many, many different levels, and all the different instructions, understandings of Dharma have to be, as a word, put into a pot and stewed together. They all have to be understood in relationship to each other, to understand in an integrated way what is the outcome of this, what is the conclusion, what is the siddhanta, what is my dharma, what is my duty in this particular time and circumstance. So the more conscious we become, which should be the qualification of persons in leadership positions, because society is meant to help people raise their consciousness, ultimately, and so the leaders have to be the higher consciousness. So they have to be able to see all these myriad different angles to understand what actually is the Dharma for this particular time and circumstance and how to apply that. So Ramayana is very much like that. So many people have a lot of difficulties with some of the applications of Dharma, of why, for instance, Ram would accept his father's proposal, which in many ways seemed to be adharmic, that he go into the forest for 14 years. And it gets worse, too. But this fellow, this Kumaraswamy, is saying, you have to try to understand this from the viewpoint of an aristocratic society, which really means, it doesn't mean, all huffy and, that type of connotation to it, but it means, again, a higher, finer consciousness. Very, very cultured and civilized because of higher consciousness. So the two things that I wanted to focus on in the next few minutes is in order to understand and hopefully to be able to accept some of these apparently indefensible applications of Dharma that are we learn of in the Ramayana. We should understand that there are many things going on in the background that have led to this condition. First of all, let me say Ramayana. Ram and Ayam means the journey or the travels of Ram. So, in one sense, we could say that the journey that Ram experienced with his associates, especially for those 14 years, well, let's say the whole lifetime, in many ways, it is something that we are all called upon to make a similar type of journey. And we find that at least most of us go through these 4 periods in our life of experiencing some kind of loss, or maybe even banishment, whether it be from an individual relationship, a society, a club, a culture. And what does that do? It leads us into a period of disillusionment. Is it me? Is it them? Maybe nothing matters. And hopefully, if we dig down deep enough, we get into the next stage, which is that we can actually develop some hope, and we can come to a stage of acceptance and understand exactly what is it that I am supposed to be learning from this apparent loss, disillusionment, banishment, etc. I read a review recently about a book, and I'm not sure, but I think the book had this title, and it was about this theme, PTG, Post-Traumatic Growth, it was called. And the book is about all these examples of people who go through very heavy emotional and physical and different types of relational trials, and they just crushed, down to the bottom. Like the saying goes, when the world's put you on your knees, it's a good time to start praying. Good situation. Otherwise it doesn't happen, Or like Emerson said, when the world gets dark enough, men start to see the stars. Try it tonight. A couple of hours from now. You don't see what's really there, all the potential, until you really are taxed to bring it out, forced to bring it out. So that's the third. That growth that comes from acceptance. And then, to move with that, and to be all we can be. But to see it in the context of Ramayana is something very special. Because Ram is a very special person. According to all Vaishnavas, we are of one Vaishnava camp called Gaudiya Vaishnavas, following in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as passed on to us through our Guru, Srila Prabhupada. And all other Vaishnavas, Ram is a avatar, the actual personality of God, the Supreme, who is coming down, descending to teach, and especially teach not only by words but by example, the Dharma, how to actually apply it. So we see it within a divine context, how he went through these 4 stages of life. Now, in terms of Ram being an avatar, not only an avatar, but a very special one at that. According to our philosophy, there are unlimited, like waves of the ocean. How many waves of the ocean? They're constantly coming and going. So many different expressions of that original being, according to time and circumstances, to present the Dharma. But all out of them, 3 of them are especially singled out as what was called paravasta, or perfect or full expressions of that supreme being. There are Krishna, who is said to be the original of all those expressions, and which are compared to be like lighting different candles from one flame. So all those different candle flames are in one sense the same. They all have the same type of potency, but yet you can go back and point to one of them as the original. That's Krishna. And then there are 2 others who are called Paravasta. They're Ram, or Lord Ram, of Chandra, and Nishingadev. Just up right there on the top of the center of the room. That's Lord Nishingadev with all the arms. Getting ready for lunch. No, he's not actually going to eat. He's just purifying them. There's a long story behind that. And if we're all fortunate, we'll be able to hear about that in about a month from now, on his birthday. So he's the 3rd Paravasta avatar. And that means that they have all these wonderful attributes of the Supreme, and they express them in full. In a way that other avatars of Vishnu don't. And there's another name, common name for Lord Ram, which displays how special he is of an avatar, and it's called Maryad Purushottama. So Maryad means like rules and regulations, and Purushottama means the supreme person. So as Dhanesvara Prabhu was saying, he's especially coming in this way, setting this example of being an ideal leader, an ideal husband, ideal son, ideal father, ideal brother, you name it. And he's stuck to following the rules of Dharma. He's Maryad Purushottama. And so when we read the Ramayana and experience what Ram went through, we gain a lot of hope and inspiration, and hopefully learning from his example that we can do likewise, because he's coming just like one of us to take that role, to show us, yeah, I can do it, you can do it. And at the same time, what's so special about it is that, at least according to our understanding, he's not just an ordinary or great human hero. He's actually a full manifestation of the divine, taking that role of a human. Now, this is what makes it so sweet. That someone with that type of full knowledge and powers and ecstasy, willing to come down and take the role of a human, have relationships where he appears to be feeling separation from his wife Sita, where he appears to be feeling limitation when he's told that his father Dasara died in separation from Ram when he was banished, and all these apparently human qualities and emotions. When God chooses to do that, that's really something special. And when we put our attention on that, we can really feel that compassion and that potency that is there, that purifying potency from meditating, hearing and meditating on what he did. So it wouldn't be the same. It's not quite the same when one of us, an ordinary human, does that. It may look like the same type of activities, same kind of words, but it doesn't have the same type of potency. When the Supreme comes down from that position and takes our role and does his lila, his pastime. So one of the main reasons, again, that he does that is not just to teach the words like Bhagavad Gita and different instructions that Ram gave in Ramayana, but is especially to teach through the example. And even more so than just teaching some kind of lessons that we can grasp intellectually and think about and decide whether I want to. Does that sound right? Do I want to do that? Can I do that? Am I capable? Even more so, just the absorption, like these folks who do this 9-day sitting and hearing of Ramayana, that absorption in that Leela, because that potency is there of the Supreme Person going through these activities. It's all attractive. Because that being is all attractive. The center of all existence, the center of all our existences. We're all going back to that center. And the closer we get to that center, obviously, the closer we are to each other, right? When we're all off on these weird, far-off tangents at the periphery, doing our little trips, not understanding that our trips are part of the one trip of God, of the center. The closer we come, and we're coming closer to each other. It's very, very logical, it's very natural, it's very practical. When we understand that we have that same sense that we're all working towards and we're all working for. And we're willing to sacrifice our own little egos for the plan, for the pleasure of that central ego, the one of which we are a part. So, he, she, you can say, also, we were just discussing the other day about Krishna's Mohini Murti avatar incarnation. He comes in all forms, not just males, and not just humans. Lord Nrsimhadev, perfect example, half human, half lion. Matsya, fish. Kurma, tortoise. So, he, the being, God, Krishna, who we say is the original, is all attractive. We're all, everything we're looking for. Just like George Harrison said in his introduction to our Krishna book. Maybe some of you had that. The Krishna book, which is about the Leela of Krishna from the Bhagavatam. So George was kind enough to pay for it, and we invited him to write a little thing in the beginning. He said, everybody's looking for Krishna. Everybody's looking for God. Some know it, some don't. Everything that we are looking for, the quality that we find attractive, whether in nature or in other individuals, humans or non-humans, those qualities are all coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the source of them all. We're all looking for Him. So, when He comes and performs these activities like in Ramayana, the foremost reason is to give us something to hear, something to remember, something to focus on. And we do want to focus on these types of activities, don't we? Because we have all these magazines, all these songs. You can't go through the checkout in a grocery store without the People magazine, the Us, the this and that. And they're all about relationships, Brad and Jolie, this and that, and he and her, and he and he. That's all that's going on, is relationship. Why? Because that is what is reality. That's the absolute truth. is God is having a love affair with himself, basically you could say. Because everything that God creates is coming from God, including us. All energies. And in one sense, they're non-different than the energetic source. So these activities that Ram is performing, activities Krishna is performing, they're all attractive. And they can actually absorb our consciousness and take our consciousness away from those other things, which is just really temporary. Temporary and not they may be soothing temporarily, but ultimately they turn to, it's like Krishna says in the Gita, happiness in a mode of passion seems like nectar in the beginning, it turns out to be poison. That's what they're like, you know. And relationships which are simply based on the superficial, they all end up like that. But if they're based on a deeper spiritual connection, then it may be difficult in the beginning to follow the rules and the regulations of Dharma, like Krishna says in the Gita, the regulated principles of freedom. The regulated, we think, well, regulated principles. And where's the freedom? Just like I smashed my knee. So my physical therapist says, now, you can do this, you can't do that. If you want to become free. If you want to become free to go up and hike on the Sedona trails again, then you have to follow the regulated principles of freedom. Right? You're sick, you gotta hold back so you can become free again to eat. So like that. So I was saying relationships means that, there has to be some self-restraint. There has to be some sacrifice. So that type of relationship we're looking for with the Supreme, with Krishna, with Ram. And we can practice within our own relationships, within our society, within our humanity at this point. The more selflessness and sacrifice and love that we can experience now can help us to enter into that ultimate relationship that each one of us has eternally with the Supreme Person. And so, more than anything else, if we take the time to read these types of sacred texts, we will find ourselves becoming absorbed, and our desires will start to change, and we'll be becoming attached to that which is actually worthy of being attached, that which doesn't have a beginning and an end. Because otherwise, the very thing that we become attached to in this world, if it's temporary, we become attached to it. Why? Because it gives us some pleasure. But because it's temporary, what's going to happen? It's going to be the cause of our pain. It's very obvious. But if we can become attached to the reality, which we are part of that, then there's no, like beginning days of Hare Krishna movement in New York. Practically all the followers were part of the counterculture. LSD freaks. And they coined a phrase to put on an invitation card. What was it? Drop out.
Oh,
tune in. Stay high forever. Right. Something like that.
Fall down. I know.
Yeah, that was another one. There isn't any coming down. There isn't any coming down in that eternal relationship, So what we're looking for is the right thing. We're just looking for it in the wrong place, So thank you very much for your attention. I think I've used the right time too. Shri Ramachandra ki jai. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanumanji ki jai. Shri Ram-navami ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.
I didn't think, I was worried, Maharaj, after he gave his talk, I didn't think anybody could beat that talk. And beat that. Thank you so much. Both very transcendental.
Because, like I said, I knew he was going to say something that'll spawn some, So that's the thing you see about spiritual association, or association which is geared towards helping everyone spiritually, is we all get together and we all just kind of build off each other. Instead of trying to tear each other apart in the exploitative materialistic culture that we're part of now, you think you get to the top by dragging somebody else down. It doesn't work. But we actually get to the top by standing on each other and taking turns. Thank you.
Maybe some people have questions from our guests. You all come up and bathe a little. We had real little deities of Sita around. And, of course, you always see Lord Rama. He has a quiver with a bow and a quiver with arrows on it. But, they're not ordinary arrows. They let those arrows go. Sometimes one becomes 1,000,000 arrows, literally, and blocks out the sun and so forth, and goes to their target. So now we're going to have Nitesh chant, lead some kirtan, and he can tell you what you all should do by chant. And then one by one, starting with the Swamis here, we go bathe the deities with some tulsi water, see what we have. And after that's done, we're going to worship the deities with an artik ceremony. That's proper. And after artik, we'll have the feast. And before I forget it, oh, never mind. That's okay. We'll make a few announcements later. So Nitesh, you go ahead.
Simple chant. And words Bolo. Bolo means to sing. Bolo Ram. Ram, of course, we're celebrating this evening. His name means the one who's pleasing or delightful. Bolo Ram, Bolo Ram, Bolo Ram. It's only the first part. And then we have Jaya Rama, Sita Rama, Jaya Rama, Hanuman. Jaya, all victory to Lord Rama and his beloved Sita. Sita, Jaya Rama, Hanuman. Of course, you've all heard the story of these different beautiful beings. And then there's a part that we'll do once in a while. Same words, different order. It always comes out when I'm chanting.